I have learned a lot of technology. Obviously, I'm going to take all my tech skills forward with me: sound editing, video editing, online theory programs, online notation. I'll take that all with me and use that definitely for next year for helping students create online as well as in person, because we can now do so many more things that I didn't think we were capable of doing. I'll probably keep a lot of assignments that were created this year because I think they're really rich learning experiences that we've created with the students. And I really enjoyed some of the new lessons, and I didn't get stuck in my old ways of doing things. So I kept things fresh for myself and for the students. The bucket drumming, I will definitely keep, or some kind of rhythmic work. I still think I want to give students a set of drumsticks. Every student should have a set of drumsticks, maybe play on their chairs or play on their textbooks. Even if they don't have a bucket in front of them, that rhythmic work that I've done this year with the students has definitely made my students better sight readers and better rhythmic readers, and they have better tempo control, I think. I guess I'll find out when I hear them all in person at the same time, but private lessons was something I did this year online with the students, and that one-on-one time is key and integral to the development of the students' tone quality and their maturity as a player, their phrasing, their shaping, because not all students are at the same level, and I'm noticing that a lot more this year with the grade nines, especially because they didn't play last year much. So I'm noticing all of the different levels coming from the different feeder schools. And I'm going to make space in my curriculum to prioritize other elements. So maybe not so much emphasis on the product, but more emphasis on the process. And just make space for new things and new ways to create, new ways to listen, new composers to listen to. Because I think that's been a real benefit this year, is opening my eyes and the students' eyes to a more diverse band world.
One thing that I learned was, despite having all the extra cleaning and safety requirements mandated, that the music room, or at least mine, has always been one of the most clean rooms in the entire school, one of the most safest, cleanest rooms. I always abided by, a strict cleaning protocols. We weren't sharing instruments. Um, so there were a lot of changes I needed to make, except like for the no sharing of music, no sharing music stands, and no and the distancing portion. But I really did learn that we are a really safe classroom to begin with, despite what others might think. I learned that technology needs to play a larger role in my classroom, and I need to be more open to bringing it in. I would typically approach my music classroom in an unplugged type of fashion because it was not my comfort level, and that's my experience growing up through high school and even through university. Was we make music unplugged together. So having to dive into that world of technology was really daunting to me. So I need to be more open to that. Uh, and there's also a lack of technology available in the school itself. I don't have a dedicated class set of iPads or Chromebooks that the students can always use. So to start a project and then to find out 3 days in that that technology is not available because someone requires it for standardized testing was always really a challenge. I've also learned that I have a really hardworking team of secondary music teachers that I work with at other schools in the community, and that we're always willing to jump in and help each other out with resources and planning ideas. I've learned, well, I've learned a lot. I've learned how much students need the band family aspect. Because of cohorting, the music room wasn't always open at lunch, and it was usually a safe haven for students to come in and hang out, to have lunch, to practice, to jam. And they were only permitted to be in there if they were in their scheduled music week. And they weren't allowed to come and eat lunch in the music room anymore. They would come in, sit distance from one another. So they didn't really have that family aspect. There wasn't the collaboration happening to the extent in the past. And really, I have learned that school life is quite drab and boring without the arts. We were not a visible presence in the school this year because we were not permitted to perform. There were no in-person festivals. And because of my lack of knowledge with technology and students being hesitant, we weren't able to successfully put any online concerts together as a school. So that, I mean, that ties back to me learning that I need to be more open and ready to access that technology and learn about it. And on top of everything, I've always known that music teachers are some of the hardest workers in the school. I feel, well, I'm biased, but I've learned really just how much a music teacher does, because I felt like I had an absurd amount of extra time on my hands this year. Although that extra time didn't really lend itself to being productive with much else, I think it was spent, revising and revamping plans that didn't go as as they were planned. Without concerts and without festivals and without school assemblies, there was just a whole lot of extra time. So I really, really realized how much of a role that music teachers play on a daily, weekly basis in their school communities.
I've definitely learned a lot this past year. One of the main things I learned is students are more adaptable than we may think. If someone had to tell me I had to teach like this a year or two ago, I would have said that is not possible. Or it's that's going to be tough. I don't know. And you know what? I think with the proper information, and reassuring families and students and saying, we will get back and we're going to do this for now, we'll make the best of it. I think staying positive and kind of being a cheerleader for music and music programs, and understanding that it's okay to have bad days and it's not going to be the same. We might not feel as passionate about music as we do normally. Just saying that that's okay, validating that, I think is a big thing. But yeah, the students surprised me with what they could do. It was quite amazing. What they can learn independently was quite fantastic. Having said that, there are still many students who struggled with that model and can't always learn as independently as their classmate. So some of that too, I had to learn to be adaptable to that too and be flexible and, outside of the class, setting up an extra time. Okay, let's meet. Let's do a little 20-minute lesson or a little sectional, or at the end of our long blocks, classes suddenly became 2.5 hours. Another thing I didn't think students would be able to sit through, either online or in person, but they managed to. But, maybe leaving some time at the end for them to work on something, getting them off their screen, or just meeting with me, or breakout rooms. So trying to be, kind of not too formulaic either, right? Making sure each class was kind of a little different, and we allowed for some time. Something I learned too was because of this 2.5 hour format, it allowed a bit more room for more options. In a typical class, by the time the students get in, you're rehearsing a bunch of repertoire, and some of the repertoire is perhaps quite long. And by the time you get into it and you really dig in, maybe you run out of time for some other things that you wanted to do, non-performance elements. So I think, the pandemic has helped me leave more time for listening and for discussing and for, I don't know, I suppose digging deeper into, learning about creativity and musical elements and, so very much so. Finally, I referred to, changing things up. This is something I had always done, was invite guests and things like that. But in the beginning of the pandemic, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to, I need to do this and I need to and I need to. And then I realized I can invite some guests too. It's, it may not be the same because it's through Zoom or whatever, but virtual guests, and I think that helped to, again, change things up, provide some perspective for everybody and a change of pace. So that was really nice. And then finally, I referred earlier to these videos on Flipgrid. This was a very powerful tool. And, in the past, when you're teaching music, through performance or you're teaching, band, it's tough because it's usually a large group of students in front of you. So it's very difficult to hear what each individual is doing. And these Flipgrid videos really gave me an excellent snapshot of what everybody was doing, and I could go back and look at them. And now, having said this, as a teacher, you have to be ready to commit to a lot of extra time, because for me to sit down after each class and go through each and every video and provide comments is very time consuming, but I think it was also very, very valuable for me to really get to know the players and where they need to go and what they need from me. But also for them to know that they need to be accountable, and they know I'm going to watch those. and but also a chance to motivate them and say, hey, this was great. I think you should try working on this, and really giving them a little nugget, no matter where they are in their skill level or experience. Everybody has something they're doing well, and then something they need to work on, right? So I think that was really great to give them a kind of a more of a, I don't know, personalized approach, I guess. So I think I learned a lot from those, that's for sure. I think a big part of the practice videos was I decided that I would continue what I began back in the spring, which was a little compilation called Musical Moments. Our school sends out a weekly e-newsletter to parents in the community. And so I thought, I'm not sure how playing is going to be. And usually we'd have a lot of playing opportunities in festivals or playing at events at the school. But obviously those things weren't happening. So I thought, we need to still be able to showcase music and musicians. And I thought, what better way to do it? We already have this newsletter going out. And I already have a lot of Flipgrid videos. And, so some of those I could start to use as little motivational tools and say, hey, this week, this is the little challenge for your Flipgrid video. It wouldn't necessarily always be, practice these 2 bars. Sometimes it would be, something silly or fun, or something more, play a significant part of your test. Or anyway, it gave me a chance to be able to tell them, look, I'm going to choose some of the most, some of the best videos or the most entertaining videos, and I'm going to put those together, and you may be chosen to be part of my little compilation called Musical Moments and showcased in the newsletter. So I think the students really enjoyed that. And of course, I think the parents as well. It's kind of nice to see their own son or daughter playing a little snippet. And I think it was really great to be able to, I think a big part of this pandemic is finding ways to showcase the students and what we're doing and what they're accomplishing. Because it's we didn't know if we'd be able to do a real concert. So a big part of, what I'm going to carry through, I think, is to keep those musical moments going. Even if I can't maybe do it every week, maybe every month or something, once things get back to normal, it may be hard to keep that going with everything else. But another thing is we always do a creative composition unit in every one of our grades in music. And I think this year gave us a bit more time to dig deeper into it, so to really give them some more tips and tricks and I don't know, I guess just what they need, a bit more what they need, and practical exercises. We had time to do exercises together. And for example, we used MS Teams for classes. So whether we were fully virtual in lockdown or whether there was half there with me and half there not, I'd say, okay, here's a little compositional exercise for the intent of teaching them something specific, right? And then, okay, take a screenshot when you're done and put it in the chat, and so then I can quickly assess from my spot without having to walk around the class. If they were there with me, they could just log on and then we could compare and look at each other's. And again, another way to kind of showcase and uplift and inspire the kids is, hey, look what Alex did. He did this in bar 5. Isn't that neat? And oh, this student did this, and kind of celebrating all the differences we can make when we're composing, and it's a really great way to inform how we play and perform and how we approach music in the future. I think the students appreciated that perspective of being a composer themselves. And finally, just a few months ago, actually, maybe it was last month, and this had been percolating in my brain for a few years now, because we've always done these compositions, but I thought, how can I showcase these compositions? It's hard to showcase a composition at a concert. And so this past year, we use MuseScore. It's just a free, notation software, but you can export it and you can put it into YouTube so that, their composition plays and it scrolls through the score as it's playing. And I thought, well, that is really neat. So I was able to showcase some of that too in our musical moments, social media. We also have, we're on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. And so sharing some of that. One of our arts teachers also thought, on our campus and around our campus, there's lots of trees, and she thought, wouldn't that be neat if we could put a bunch of little QR codes, and some of them could be musical compositions, some could be visual art and little messages. We could put those up, and families and students and staff, following the health protocols, could maybe walk around and scan and do some of that. So some of those codes are still up at our school right now, and I thought that was a really neat idea. So, and a different way to showcase music making.
I will, as I said before, I think I may have alluded to this already, right? Just be more patient, be more understanding, because students are behind from what we normally know them to be. Like at the end of grade 9, sure, my bands usually can play grade 3 music, or B300 music, but they're not going to be able to do that now, right? So there's going to be 2 grades, the grade 9s and grade 10s, who haven't had a regular experience. Even the next year, the grade 11s next year, they had a half a year experience, right? So it's just going to be a lower level, but it's still going to be a great atmosphere. It's still going to be a welcoming community. We're still going to have fun. I'm still going to make a fool of myself in rehearsal. It's going to be as fun as it can be. And I really think that because it's been so stressful with staying at home and wearing masks and hand sanitizer and all of those not really new, but things that we've done as a grand community to flatten the curve, as the term was way 14 months ago, and to get the numbers down and say goodbye to COVID. We need music now more than ever, because we need everyone to be in a happy place. We need everyone to have that kind of therapeutic response to playing the saxophone, and maybe they're good at it and maybe they're not, but who cares? They need to enjoy the experience. And if they can enjoy the experience through playing saxophone in the jazz band, or tuba in the concert band, or singing tenor, or whatever the case may be, or guitar class, having them play, learn how to play bar chords on a guitar class, it doesn't really matter. As long as they're involved with something that's greater than themselves, I think that is the most important thing that any educator, music, history, math, whatever, can offer to the students next year. And even now, it's hard to do right now because we're all online, but even in September and beyond, it can't just be about learning the math equation. It can't just be about learning the flute. It has to be about more. And I think that music is the perfect way of doing that, because they play their clarinet and they practice their scales in their bedroom, and then they come into band practice with 100 of their friends, and they make music with their friends. They learn to breathe together as a unit. Like I don't know what other subject teaches that. I don't know what other subject teaches the brain, both sides of the brain, the heart, the soul, all of that. I think it's just as music educators, we have we're in an amazing place right now. I mean, it sucks right now, but we're in an amazing place right now as well, where we can influence great change.